Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, this is Drew Daniel with Mel 604 for Dr. Stedman, and Shelly Sink has been nice enough to grant me her time to do our instructional interview. And so I've already kind of met with her about this, and I'm just going to get started with the questions. So, Shelly, what's your job title, and how long have you been serving in that capacity? I know since I've been a department head, you've been running things for the curriculum instruction, but what's the official job title and how long have you been doing it?
So there's actually two official job titles. I think it depends on which HR person you ask, but I guess they both sort of fit. So there's never one that's been chosen, but teacher trainer is one job title. So I think that sort of speaks to professionally developing teachers and coaching them. And the other job title that's probably more popular is coordinating teacher of middle school science. So when I think of coordinating, that's kind of bringing everything together and keeping everything straight. And I think that's the more popular title because it's more comprehensive in the job responsibilities and that it encompasses other than just professionally developing teachers. So I started there the first week of June of 2014, so about 2.5 years.
Okay, 2.5, got it. And I will say this, Shelly, I bet you were an incredible teacher, but you do a really good job leading adult sessions. I always really enjoy, I'm being serious, when you lead the professional development from that series. I've always taken a lot away from that. That's really nice.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I always try to put myself in the shoes of the participants and be like, what would I want?
All right, and so the primary responsibility in that area, clearly the middle school science coordinator. I know, from that end, just teaching science and stuff like that, you're running sure, making sure that everybody is properly trained for safety and things are running smooth with training for the science, coordinating that. But what is, as far as when you said the teacher trainer, is there anything else I missed from that primary responsibility from those areas?
So I guess I would have a couple areas that I feel like I know Dr. Bass, my supervisor, often says there's kind of three major areas that we do. It's training teachers, dealing with curriculum, and just kind of the other administrative sort of things that we're responsible for. So for science, that includes Science Olympiad, like you mentioned, the safety thing. It's serving on grant committees. Believe it or not, a lot of my time is spent serving on panels related to whether we're going to writing the grant, and once we get the grant, following up with the people who receive the money and making sure that they're following the guidelines for the grant. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize that we do, is deal with all the grants that happen in the county. And a lot of them are science because of STEM and things, and PBL and things like that. So science has a lot of them.
Oh, okay. I had no idea you were doing stuff with grants. I gotcha.
And then there's things like magnet programs. Magnet programs are separate than regular schools, and they have electives that are science content based. And so when they are writing a new one or updating an old one, then we have to kind of vet that and make sure that the science content is correct and that instructionally is good and all that. So, I guess the main job is dealing with making sure that teachers have curriculum and that they have good strategies and all that. But I feel like there's almost endless other little things here and there that we get called to be a part of. With the county strategic plan, there's a lot of new committees. So like I'm on the whole child committee, which makes sure that we're addressing the social emotional needs of kids and things like that.
And many other acronyms. I'm sure. Otis, are you familiar with Otis? I'm not, but that's the new one, right? Are you familiar with this?
Well, Otis is a initiative through the MTSS, through the intervention department.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I kind of got out of that one which I think there's some effort to try to not spread us so thin
Sure.
among all these other initiatives, because it takes away from our primary responsibilities for the content and working with teachers.
So when I saw you at the, I guess they were called learning rounds last year, I saw you at that. How does that fit? What hat are you wearing when you're doing that? Is that seeing what type of instructional strategies teachers are using just in random classrooms? Because I know we were going to math classes that day, and you coordinate science. So what was that hat that you're wearing when you came to that with all the other assistant principals and principals from that? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. And we participate in a lot of that. I mean, that just reminded me of something else that our middle school team, which includes people from all content areas, we organize and plan and lead and instruct the IRT meetings, instructional resource teachers, and the principals. So I think that falls under that hat of just overall good instructional practices.
Yeah.
And so those learning rounds, that's just a lot of those we're looking for either student or teacher behaviors as much as, or in your situation, we were looking specifically at math, but within that, what were the strategies high enough level? Were they 4Cs? Were they teacher-centered or student-centered? So a lot of those things kind of go across content areas.
So that's this class that I'm taking. It's very much about the buzzword empowering teachers, right, to be instructional designers rather than just sort of sages on the stage up there, delivering content for rote memorization. That's just a lot of what the literature that we're researching is all about. And so I just think that a lot of what you guys are doing, whether it's, when I meet with you or someone else from the county, then it's about finding ways to implement these things in the classroom in such a way that is integrating those 4 C's, right? And so that's why you're going around and seeing, and then you take that feedback back, I guess, and then do professional development off that. Or
are you talking specifically about the learning room?
No, just when you have but when you give professional development, is it always planned out based off of, is it up to you based off of what you see, or is it sort of like the county's initiative, you're required to give teachers strategies?
Okay, I understand the question now. So I would say it's kind of a combination of both. I think our middle school team works very closely together as a team. I don't think that necessarily is happening at the elementary and high school level for a variety of reasons. High school tends to operate more in silos, to use the overused analogy, but elementary, there's just so many of them, and there's 120 some elementary schools and a huge elementary team. So we have a manageable number of schools and a team of only 7 people. So I think we work a little better in that regard. But we kind of collectively talk about what have our department chairs asked for. We do a year-end survey. What's kind of the pulse of what we see when we're out in schools? What is needed? What are teachers struggling with? And what are principals? I mean, we survey the IRTs, we survey the principals, so we try to get input from our clientele, so to speak, as to what they feel like they need, and then we mesh that with any county initiatives that we feel like are important or necessary. So last year this year actually, the end of last school year, we had our first middle school retreat. So we basically spent 3 days all together planning out the next school year as far as professional development, and we kind of threw out ideas and sort of went through that brainstorming process. What all fits together? What can we do that serves all content areas, and then what specific things can we break down for individual content? And some of that, unfortunately, we felt like we left with a very good plan, and some of that got axed at levels
Yeah.
above us.
Okay.
So I think that's a frustrating thing that happens when you're dealing with a large county or maybe any district thing is you have ideas and needs, but there are people above you that have other ideas, and sometimes they don't mesh. So that's kind of what we ran into this year with what we have planned to do and then what we were ended up being allowed to do.
I understand. Okay. I asked a couple questions that I was just interested in that aren't on this list, but I was just interested in that. So thank you. What is, okay. So I think I know the answer to this question, but from an insider's perspective, I guess, what's the process used to evaluate the effectiveness of adopted curriculum at the district level?
So,
I mean, it's got to come from, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's got to come from scores, right? Like EVA scores and EOG scores and like all these, you know, iReadies and things like this, or is that not at all what you're thinking when you hear that question? Are you hearing something about how effective is the Common Core and the curriculum that's being implemented at the county level? What do you think of that when you hear it?
Well, I think of a couple different things about the curriculum, a couple different things about assessment, and then responses to those. So for science specifically, I mean, we only have the 8th grade EOG, and
right.
prior to that, we had the 5th grade EOG. So
yep.
Unlike math and language arts, where you have not only do you have yearly data, but you have these things like you mentioned, iReady or the old, what was the other one, Path Driver.
Yep. Okay.
Even the more purchased benchmarks like Case 21 or Blue Diamond or all those.
yeah.
Then you have a lot more data to work with in that situation. But I would say for science and social studies, I mean, we go back and forth whether there's a state test or whether we have benchmarks or things like that. But I think some of it is responsive to teacher feedback, and it's kind of hard to have a response when you don't feel like you have solid data.
Right.
And I think the other thing that is a struggle with the county in the last 5 to 6 years is that back when you and I were in school and even when we first started teaching, probably there was a standard textbook or curriculum. And in recent years, I do understand this idea that textbooks are expensive and we don't want to just have kids do the questions at the end of the chapter, or we're moving toward digital. But I think in science specifically, this is totally a curriculum thing, is that there needs to be a leveled text that has the content in it so that if you are at Apex Middle School or you're at East Wake Middle School or you're at Holly Ridge Middle School, a kid at those 3 schools, you at least know they have access to the same content material and can be pointed to that, because with science you have such a variety of teachers' content knowledge that, just take earthquakes for example, you might have one teacher who has a good background in science, is comfortable with the material, knows what to look for, understands the standard, and is fine with using a variety of resources. Then you have another teacher that's not that comfortable with the topic, is Googling, is going to websites that may or may not be the right level for a 6th grader.
Right.
And so I feel strongly in science that we should have some type of consistent resource. And I think they were trying to do that with Discovery Edge, but I'm not sure that that's really
how much it caught on. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure that anybody looks at that like it's a replacement for a textbook. And so that's kind of my thoughts on the resources, that it would be easier. And then we have CMAP, which is undergoing constant revision, and that's what I was just doing yesterday and today, is to hire Society Institute, and we wrote curriculum for 2 days for third quarter to try to really amp up the 4Cs and PBO and all that.
Yep.
And I'm excited about what we created. But once that goes out there, first of all, you don't know that the teachers are actually using it, and you don't know whether they're using it with fidelity.
Yep.
And so it's really hard to just say, like, this curriculum is or is not working.
Well, I'll say this: for the last 3 or 4 years, when it hasn't been 7th grade, I teach 7th grade, not 8th, so it's not tested. When it hasn't had an EOG, obviously, or benchmarks, or even the state standard test at the end, man, it's been like a wild, wild west free for all, where every teacher's doing their own thing, and it was becoming a problem. And our IRT really, we have a great one, but came in there and really has us, looking at data and from tests, trying to make common formative assessments, checking out CMAP, making sure we're lining things up, because that can become a real problem if people, aren't held accountable, I would say. So that all makes a lot of sense, what you said.
Well, I guess I didn't think about which grade level you're teaching. I will say I'm ecstatic about the genetic stuff that the teachers created the last 2 days. Like, I cannot wait for you to hopefully use it.
Oh, good. That's my favorite unit too. The genetics is wonderful.
It is like scenario-based, real-life-based. It's just, I am beyond excited about what they created, so I can't wait for it to get rolled out.
I can't wait to check that out. So here's, I guess this next question will lead into what we were talking about pretty well. It says, what changes, if any, do you think need to occur in the curriculum, since you have your hand in that a little bit, in order to meet 21st century skills? I guess it's kind of a broad question, but I kind of feel like you guys are already rolling it out, like you just said, right, with the CMAP, and you're kind of helping to implement ways that 4Cs, and what was the other thing you said? PCL?
PBO, project-based learning.
Okay, yep. So what changes do you think? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so what we did yesterday at the beginning was I started by having teachers just share their own background in science and what we call like your science capital. And that's all the collective experiences that add up to who you are as a science person. And just reflect on how the kids that are sitting in the classroom, how they can have, like, what their experiences might be or might not be, and how we can create experiences in the class that make science relevant to them, make it interesting to them, and therefore they'll be motivated and engaged. So we kind of reframed our thinking about why we wanted kids to love science and why it was important. And then we moved from there to talking about how we have to start with standards. And I mean, I will admit, until some of the standards worked the past year, like I'm not sure that our last revision of CMAP, in fact, I know there's some stuff on there that's not in the lane of our standards. It's a little too much or not enough.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're really, and we had some hard conversations today about people wanting to hold on to doing the periodic table in 6th grade, and we're like, that's not really the standard.
Right.
We want to pull DNA out of strawberries or whatever. That's not really in the standard.
Yeah.
So, like, really kind of talking about, and but everybody's like, but those two things are in CMAP. I'm like, I know they are now, but they really shouldn't be.
Right.
We've got to move toward truly just going to the standard and looking vertically. I think that's the other piece that is really important in the curriculum that I hadn't been focused on in the past as a teacher or in this position, was truly looking at what a kid is doing in K through 5 and then what they're going to go do in 9 through 12. And that has come to life even more as Kastana and I are going around to the schools, because I've seen kids cutting out Pangea in 6th grade, 8th grade, and earth earth environmental or whatever the earth science is in high school. And I'm like, we don't need to be cutting out Pangea in all three.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
We're coloring the periodic table. I've seen coloring a periodic table in 6th grade, 8th grade, regular chem, and believe it or not, AP chemistry coloring periodic tables.
Yeah.
So if all of the halogens were always the same color, that might be an effective strategy, but sometimes they're purple and sometimes they're yellow, and then the kids don't see that progression. So I think curriculum-wise, we can do a lot of improvement of having consistent language and practices that build on each other instead of repeating and having kids, oh, here we go again, we're coloring periodic table again, and we're not really understanding it. So moving in the direction of, like, for example, here's another 7th grade. The two teachers who wrote the cell section, they based all of the learning about the cell around cancer. And they're going to start the section with having kids reflect and put post-it notes up about how they have been affected by cancer. Who do they know? What do they know that relates to their life about cancer? And they're anchoring the entire thing around cancer. And then that's going to build to genetics. So
that's really cool. Yeah.
That's outside the box, but I think we've got to start doing that to really hook kids in.
Well, it always sticks with me, how you guys preach that maybe the kids should be the ones that are tired at the end of the day and not the teachers, as well. Not the meaning that the teachers should be lazy, but just kind of put in the learning, empowering them to be learners and giving them the tools and things they need to be successful to master that content. So that all makes a lot of sense too. You mentioned the textbooks from before and how it would be great if there was, just a standard textbook that everybody so they could know that the standards, and the digital textbook didn't work out. Well, the next question is kind of about technology, because we know, I think in most high schools, the 3-to-1 is getting rolled out soon, right? Every learner is going to, I guess, a 3-to-1 ratio of technological device is going to happen in middle schools too. But since there's, not enough funding in Wake County, and most schools are not at a 1-to-1 student technological device ratio, how do you feel about this leading coalition for learners to use their phones or other, random devices, Kindle Fires from home, the BYOD coalition? How do you feel about that? Just from an insider's perspective, I'm curious.
I mean, I think it is the way of the future to go digital. I know when we opened Pine Hollow this year, I recommended that they have a class set of textbooks, and so they have a textbook that nobody else in the county has, because the ones everybody else has are outdated and not even available. But what came with that print textbook was a 7-year access to the online version of the textbook. So it's actually like a Kindle. It's like you flip pages and the kids all have access to that.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, because it's kind of a hybrid model of, okay, if the internet's down or we don't have electricity, I mean, those are extreme and rarely happen, but there's still that tangible, we can look in the book, we can kind of have that resource available in case devices are not for some reason, but generally they're using it on their device, and most textbook companies have that option now, or actually it's not even usually an option, it just comes with it when you purchase. And so the online does offer the ability to annotate online, whereas you can't write in a textbook, so the kids can download the pages as PDFs or, Word or whatever, and interact with it. So it does offer that, and I guess that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Is kind of a hybrid model until we're sort of way into the digital future where everybody has a device that is able to see it, and I think that's more as an equity thing as well, because you have some kids that have these big fancy tablets and they can see the print, and then you may have another family that only has one or two phones in the family, and that's all the technology, and then you've got the kids trying to do their homework on a little phone.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, sometimes I get spoiled. You know, I teach right beside that golf course in Holly Springs, right? So just about 80% of these kids have like better iPhone than I do. But I completely see what you're saying, and I think that's true. Especially it's not equitable, but a hybrid model is. I think that's a good point. There's just a couple more questions. So you do a lot of training of adults. Training is expensive too, right? Because I guess the ones that I always go to with you, generally it's after school just because I'm a department head and I come to your department meetings, but I'm assuming you do a lot more than that. PD, right? So it costs money because you got to get a sub and things like this. So considering funding restraints many schools have, one of the questions that we were supposed to ask is, what do you see as the best way to train teachers to be, educational leaders and provide them with the information you want when there's funding restraints and maybe they can only come to 1 or 2 sessions a year, if at all?
So we realized that was going to be a challenge this year, and we didn't get the funding for it. So we tried to do kind of a option of online learning or come face-to-face after school.
Okay.
And there were a lot of communication issues and things where we were kind of told to put everything on hold, and then at the last minute, no, you can do it. So there was not enough time to communicate and all that. So we didn't really have that many people sign up for the after-school thing. Plus, who wants to make it a 12-hour workday practically? So we did have a reasonable number who have signed up. I think I have about 20 that have signed up for the Science Online for 8th grade. This was just for 8th grade teachers this year. And our team is working on what that online module looks like. But you just can't beat the face-to-face collaboration, working with other teachers, building those relationships. You can't build those relationships when it's online, at least not like you can in person.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that we do need to still get teachers. Sometimes it's just psychologically good to get away from the classroom for a day or so and work with other teachers and feel like a professional and have a lunch that you can go sit and enjoy. And I think that's important from an emotional, psychological standpoint. But it also helps them build a network of other teachers, and I just hope that we get to a point where the district or the state or wherever the money's coming from can find value in that again, because we saw a spike in our 6th grade scores after that 6th grade focus 2 years ago, and we had less funding and less contact with 7th grade teachers last year, but we still saw improvements in scores. So we know that face-to-face PD helps teachers. The other thing that we are seeing that is helping is our team is going out to early release days.
Okay,
so working with the entire staff at an early release day where all 4 content areas are there, and we're doing sort of a big session and then break out by content, or just kind of that where we are the resource coming into the school when the principal has time that can happen. I think that kind of is the best of both. The teachers are within the workday, but they're still having face-to-face professional development, but that so few opportunities for that there either needs to be more opportunities for that, like teachers are paid for 11 months or 10 and a half months, and those professional development days are kind of built into that, or we need more funding to pay for stuff.
I agree. Well, I'll say this: whenever I go to one of these PD sessions, I've never gone back to the school and not shared, the number one awesome thing that I saw with a teacher. You know what I'm saying? So there's that piece too, that train the trainer mentality, where you're just spreading the wealth. As long as it's a good session that you're using your time wisely, I feel like that's just even one can be really beneficial. let's see. There's one more question. I know this has been long, Shelly. I really appreciate you, but this is.
No, that's really talking to you.
So as an instructional leader and a trainer yourself, and you're sitting there, you're back in school and everything. What's the number one piece of advice, I guess, you would have for, because everybody in this cohort that I'm in, that I'm going to share this information with, because we all had to sort of, we're from different counties and stuff. But what's the number one piece of advice, I guess, that you would have for a teacher or a future administrator who wants to deliver or help make their school the right place that can deliver quality instruction that's appropriate for the students?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind was the teachers need to feel like that they are respected professionals.
Right.
The very first, I guess it was about the second department chair meeting I ever ran back when I first took the position. We all met over at the Institute for Emerging Issues over at NC State, the Governor Hunt Library, and the leader of the Emerging Issues Institute asked the teachers, like, what is the primary thing that would change your life as a teacher? And a lot of them didn't say anything about pay or resources. It was, I want respect in my building.
Right.
And they gave examples of that, like, treat me as a professional until I screw up. And instead of punishing the whole staff for one person's mistake. And specific examples they gave were like, we shouldn't have to fill out a form for every single video we show or video clip. If it's on teaching channel, it should be okay. Like, just kind of feeling like we shouldn't have to have, like, there shouldn't be assigned parking spaces, or you shouldn't have to sign in a notepad every morning. And I think that goes to some work that's been done with principals and APs, like, do your beliefs match your practice?
Right.
So if you believe that teachers are responsible adults, then don't make them sign in the mailroom. Or if you believe that their time is valuable, then don't run staff meetings 45 minutes longer than the time. Or, so things like that. And I just see the principals, I mean, we go into a lot of schools, and you can walk, and even as Christina and I are walking around, you can walk into a school, and within 60 seconds, you can feel the culture of the school. It's the front office staff, it's the smiles